Welcome to this exploration of one of the most infamous conspiracies in English history, the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. I've long been fascinated by this audacious attempt to blow up Parliament and kill King James I, not just for its dramatic nature, but for what it reveals about the religious and political tensions simmering in early 17th century England. As we delve into the details, we'll see how a group of disaffected Catholics very nearly changed the course of British history through an act of staggering violence. But we'll also examine the wider context, the persecution that drove them to such desperate measures, and the far-reaching consequences of their failed plot. Before we dive in, it's worth noting that while the basic outline of the Gunpowder Plot is well known, many of the details remain contested by historians. Was the plot truly the work of a small group of Catholic extremists, or were there wider forces at play? To what extent was the government aware of the conspiracy before its dramatic discovery? These are questions we'll grapple with as we piece together the events of 1605. I'll share my own views, but I encourage you to consider the evidence and draw your own conclusions about this pivotal moment in English history. Faith. Here's an equivocator that could swear in both the scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. To understand the Gunpowder Plot, we need to step back and examine the religious landscape of England at the turn of the 17th century. The country had been through decades of religious upheaval, following Henry VIII's break with Rome in the 1530s. His daughter Elizabeth I had established a Protestant settlement, but many hoped her successor James I might be more tolerant of Catholics. James's mother, after all, was Mary Queen of Scots, a Catholic martyr in the eyes of many. But those hopes were soon dashed. James proved to be firmly Protestant, and the persecution of Catholics continued unabated. It's difficult for us today to grasp just how central religion was to life and politics in early modern England. This wasn't simply a matter of personal belief. Your religion determined your place in society, your political allegiances, even your loyalty to the crown. Catholics faced crippling fines for refusing to attend Anglican services, were barred from many professions, and lived under constant suspicion of treason. Priests faced execution if caught. This persecution bred resentment and desperation among some Catholics, creating a powder keg of discontent that would ultimately explode in the Gunpowder Plot. I would be glad to have both their heads and their bodies separated from this whole island and transported beyond seas. It's worth noting that not all Catholics supported violent resistance. Many remained loyal to the crown despite their suffering, hoping for gradual reform and greater toleration. But a radical fringe, influenced by Jesuit ideas about the legitimacy of deposing heretical monarchs, began to contemplate more extreme measures. It was from this milieu that the gunpowder conspirators would emerge, convinced that only a dramatic blow against the Protestant regime could save English Catholicism from extinction. At the heart of the Gunpowder Plot was Robert Catesby, a charismatic Catholic gentleman from Warwickshire. Catesby had been involved in earlier plots against the government and had grown increasingly radical in his views. In May 1604, he gathered a small group of like-minded Catholics at the Duck and Drake Inn in London to share his audacious plan. They would blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament, killing the king, his heir, and much of the Protestant nobility in one fell swoop. In the ensuing chaos, they hoped to spark a Catholic uprising and install James's young daughter Elizabeth as a Catholic monarch. The original conspirators were a mix of gentry and soldiers, all devout Catholics who felt they had little left to lose. Thomas Winter, Catesby's cousin, was a skilled linguist who had fought in the Netherlands. John Wright was renowned as one of the finest swordsmen in England. Thomas Percy was a distant relation of the powerful Earl of Northumberland. And then there was Guy Fawkes, a veteran soldier with expertise in explosives, crucial for their plan. Over time, the group expanded to include others like Catesby's servant Thomas Bates and the wealthy Sir Everard Digby. Let us give the attempt, and where it faileth, pass no further. The scale of their ambition was matched only by the audacity of their plan. They leased a cellar directly beneath the House of Lords, gradually filling it with 36 barrels of gunpowder, enough to reduce the building to rubble. Guy Fawkes, using the alias John Johnson, was to light the fuse and then escape across the Thames. Meanwhile, other conspirators would kidnap Princess Elizabeth from her residence at Combe Abbey. It was an intricate plan with many moving parts, and as we'll see, that complexity would ultimately contribute to its undoing. As the plotters made their final preparations in the autumn of 1605, events took an unexpected turn. On the 26th of October, Catholic peer Lord Monteagle received an anonymous letter warning him to avoid Parliament. Monteagle immediately took the letter to the government. This has long been a point of contention among historians. Was the letter a genuine warning from a concerned party, or part of a government sting operation? I tend to lean towards the former, given the circumstantial evidence linking it to Francis Tresham, one of the conspirators with familial ties to Monteagle. But we may never know for certain. The government, led by spymaster Robert Cecil, chose not to act immediately on the warning. Instead, they waited until the night of November the 4th to search the undercroft beneath Parliament. There they found Guy Fawkes with the gunpowder, mere hours before the plot was to be executed. Fawkes was arrested and, after initially refusing to name his co-conspirators, was tortured into a full confession. The other plotters fled London, making a desperate last stand at Holbecker House in Staffordshire. In the ensuing firefight, Catesby and several others were killed. The remaining conspirators were captured, tried for treason, and executed in January 1606. The gentler tortures, are to be first used unto him, et sic per gradus ad immatenditur, and thus by steps extended to the bottom depths, and so God speed your good work. The aftermath of the Gunpowder Plot had far-reaching consequences for English Catholics. New laws were passed further restricting their rights, and suspicion of Catholic treachery reached new heights. The government used the plot to justify increased persecution, despite the fact that most English Catholics had been horrified by the conspiracy. The 5th of November became an annual celebration of Protestant deliverance, with bonfires and fireworks, a tradition that continues to this day as Bonfire Night. The memory of the plot has been kept alive for centuries, shaping English identity and attitudes towards Catholicism well into the modern era. In the centuries since 1605, the Gunpowder Plot has been subject to endless analysis and reinterpretation. Some have seen it as a straightforward terrorist conspiracy, while others have detected the hand of the government in its convenient discovery. The 19th century Jesuit John Gerard, namesake of one of the priests implicated in the original plot, even argued that the entire affair was orchestrated by Robert Cecil to discredit Catholics. While I find this extreme view difficult to credit, given the weight of evidence for the reality of the conspiracy, it does highlight the ongoing debates surrounding the plot. One aspect that fascinates me is how the memory of the Gunpowder Plot has been kept alive and reshaped over the centuries. Guy Fawkes, originally just one member of the conspiracy, has become its enduring face, his stylist mask now a global symbol of anti-government protest. The annual commemoration has evolved from a straightforwardly anti-Catholic celebration to a more general excuse for revelry, with the political and religious overtones largely forgotten by many participants. It's a testament to the plot's grip on the English imagination that it continues to be remembered over 400 years later. Neither the Carthaginians infamous in the name of perfidy, nor the cruel Scythian, nor Turk, or the dreaded Sarmatian, nor the anthropophagi, nurslings of mad savagery, nor any nation as barbarous in the furthermost regions of the world has heard. In recent years, there's been renewed interest in understanding the plot in its historical context, seeing the conspirators not simply as fanatics or terrorists, but as products of their time and circumstances. While their actions were undoubtedly extreme, they emerge from a climate of religious persecution and political disillusionment that's important to understand. As we continue to grapple with issues of religious extremism and political violence in our own time, the Gunpowder Plot remains a compelling case study in the dangers of radicalization and the complex interplay between religion and politics. As we conclude our exploration of the Gunpowder Plot, it's worth reflecting on what might have been. Had the conspirators succeeded, the course of English and indeed world history would have been dramatically altered. The destruction of Parliament and the death of the king would have plunged the country into chaos, potentially leading to civil war or foreign intervention. The backlash against Catholics would likely have been even more severe than what actually occurred. It's a sobering reminder of how close England came to a catastrophic act of terrorism. Yet the failure of the plot also marked a turning point. While it led to increased persecution in the short term, it also demonstrated the futility of violent resistance. In the long run, it may have contributed to the gradual shift towards greater religious toleration in England. The memory of the Gunpowder Plot served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of religious extremism that helped shape the development of a more pluralistic society. Of course, full Catholic emancipation would not come for another 2 centuries, but the seeds of that change were perhaps already being sown in the aftermath of 1605. England might have become a more Puritan absolute monarchy, as existed in Sweden, Denmark, Saxony and Prussia in the 17th century, rather than following the path of parliamentary and civil reform that it did. In the end, the Gunpowder Plot remains a fascinating episode that continues to capture our imagination. It's a tale of religious persecution, political intrigue, and revolutionary violence that speaks to enduring themes in human history. As we remember the 5th of November, we would do well to reflect on the complex forces that drive individuals to extreme actions and the long shadows that such events can cast across centuries. The echoes of the Gunpowder Plot still resonate today, reminding us of the power of memory and myth in shaping our understanding of the past. As we come to the end of our journey through the Gunpowder Plot, I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for this pivotal moment in English history. From the religious tensions that sparked the conspiracy to its dramatic discovery and far-reaching aftermath, it's a story that continues to fascinate and provoke debate. Whether you see the plotters as misguided zealots or desperate freedom fighters, their actions undeniably left an indelible mark on the course of British history. I've always been struck by how the Gunpowder Plot encapsulates so many of the tensions and conflicts of its era. The struggle between Catholicism and Protestantism, the consolidation of state power, the role of violence in political change. It's a reminder of how religious beliefs can drive individuals to extreme actions, and how governments can exploit fear and suspicion for political ends. As we continue to grapple with religious extremism and political violence in our own time, the lessons of the Gunpowder Plot remain relevant. I never yet knew a treason without a Romish priest, but in this there are very many Jesuits who are known to have dealt and passed through the whole action. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Gunpowder Plot. I hope you found it as enlightening as I have. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support really does make a difference and allows me to continue producing in-depth historical content. Do let me know in the comments if there are other historical events or periods you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Until next time, remember to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning from the rich tapestry of our shared past.